Megaman Battle Network 5 is another entry in a series which I've also spent a lot of time as a kid, and like the 6th title, I think it still holds up today. There's quite a lot to this entry that I find super cool, and frankly, in a lot of ways, I actually prefer this to the 6th entry. I still think both are good on their own, I just like some aspects of this game a lot more. And I do think it's time to get into the actual video so I can actually explain it myself, and one of the things I actually love about this game has to be its story. It might not be too different from your standard Megaman story, but I still think it works pretty well here. Basically, you're tasked to get rid of spots that Nebula has taken over, and the main villain actually had stolen reports from Land's father, and that's why he's also trying to take over the net, just to distract everyone so he can actually focus on getting the plans. There are also some other events I also found pretty interesting, like spoiler warning for like the 5 people that kill, and that's Megaman being taken over by Nebula. Stuff like this I actually really like just because it throws off the main characters and keeps you on the edge. The next part I like definitely had to be the gameplay. It's still the same like every other entry in the series, but I still really like it here. One of the additions here is that you can actually use dog chips and dog crosses, and this I find kind of fun just because they might be stronger, but they have some really negative side effects if you do use them. Stuff like this I find really cool just because again, you can actually do fights a little bit differently because now you don't have to rely on just crossing another power up. And on the topic of crossing, I also really like it here. I feel it's a bit more strategic just because now it only lasts 3 turns and you have to waste a chip in order to do so. And much like the 6th game, it actually gives a buff to certain aspects, like for example the Night Soul letting you become invincible if any chip is used in the front row. It also gives a buff to breaking chips when charged. There was much more crosses and each of them do provide certain buffs, as I mentioned. My favorite ones have to be the Gyro Soul, Napalm Soul, Tomahawk Soul, and Cornel Soul. I also do really enjoy the sprite work. It's very similar to the 6th game, and I still really do like it here. They're all really colorful and I just again find them to be really nice to look at. The biggest part to why I love this game has to be the liberation missions, aka the dog spots that Nebula puts up. I feel these add a decent challenge to the game, especially with the layer missions. You basically have to go around whatever map to reach the boss and then take back the zone. And these parts also let you control other net navies, which to me at least provided something to look forward to since now I wouldn't be playing as Megaman the entire game. Another part why I really like this game has to be the pacing, where I feel something interesting almost happens all the time, which is generally really good. And there isn't much pain in the game. There was some parts, but frankly I feel most of it is just again really well paced. And for the most part, Battle Network 5 is a very solid Mega Man game. It's probably my favorite one out of all the ones I've played. But you already know there are some problems with this game that I still really don't like, and one of them has to be that the teammates don't really get developed. They do have their own section of the game dedicated to them, but they're only really introduced, you deal with a problem, and then they're on their team. And the focus is mostly on Land, Megaman, and somewhat on whatever leader of whatever version you have, that being either Chad or Brawl. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I probably butchered it because I never heard it said out loud. But I really wish this wasn't the case just because each member is unique on their own, and frankly it just, comes down to them being not much of a character after that. Something else I didn't really like as much has to be how some of the areas look. I feel that the coloring and the backgrounds don't really look as nice, and they can either be really bright or just really dark, and there's like almost no in between. This one might be a little bit minor, I admit, but after replaying the game again, I've noticed this a lot more and just kind of off-putting for the most part. Another part I really don't like about this game definitely has to be the fact that the villains don't really matter, and those being the Dog Lords. For the most part, they're just one-off villains with no or very little build-up. This kind of does suck because they're just bad guys for the sake of being bad guys. I feel this doesn't really apply to the leader as much, so again, this is just targeted towards the Dog Lords. They do have some personality with their dialogue and how they fight. I just wish that we were given more backstory on them, so you can actually feel like you've actually taken down a worthy adversary instead of just being a normal bad guy. But I still feel that this problem and the teammates not getting as much development is the worst part of the game, just because I kinda expected more. This is one thing I think the 6th game did a little bit better, because I actually liked some of the side characters a lot more, but regardless, the amount of fun I have with this game can make me mostly overlook these problems. But I want to know what's your guys' favorite parts of Mega Man Battle Network 5. Let your thoughts in the comments below. But of course, before we finish the video, let's go over the likes and dislikes. Likes: the story, gameplay, the cross system, good looking sprites, liberation missions are fun, the game is so challenging, and the pacing is really good. Dislikes: teammates don't get developed, backgrounds can look too bright or too dark, and the villains don't have much character. Thank you all for watching, and see you guys later.